Coming up on Lyssa and Lyssa.
Still gets better. I love it. Also, I love this part. Emotional tears have components that are not found in basal tears or reflex tears, such as prolactin, potassium, manganese, and stress hormones. This would suggest that the purpose of crying could be to release pain and stress, because that's what those regulate, those chemicals that are inside of us. Literally, when our tears come out, only emotional ones though, because the other tears that our body produces does not have this in it. So these are specific types of tears that come from somewhere else that are coming directly to relieve us of pain and stress. So it's literally purging your body of pain and stress right out your eyeballs, okay? They've tested tears, and these things are in emotional tears only. So that's, I love that. That's so fascinating. I had no idea. That's amazing. So our body knows when we're crying from emotional pain and stress, rather than just getting affected by an onion. It knows, and those tears are biologically made of something different. So that's fascinating. That's amazing. I'm such a nerd. Sorry.
Hey, listen!
Hello. Welcome back to Lyssa and Lyssa. I am your host, Lyssa. So we left off on red flag number 4, which was one-sided interests and hypocritical expectations. And we are now going to carry on into red flag number 5. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Moving right along. Red flag number 5, judging or disregarding your emotions.
No.
Emotions. Let's talk about them. In every relationship, you're going to come to the moment where you're going to have to cross that bridge of some uncomfortable emotions, some vulnerable emotions, and maybe some emotions directed at how your partner has hurt you, vice versa. Those are uncomfortable situations. They're hard to deal with, okay? But you do that more and more in your partnership, and you're going to get better at it, ideally. Is there a right way to respond to someone else's emotion? What do you think, like, in your opinion? Would you say that there is a right way to respond to another person's emotions in general? I'll tell you my opinion. And my opinion is that there's a plethora of right ways, and they all kind of fall in this sphere. And then there's many outliers that are absolutely the wrong way. So I would say that when you base it around the understanding, the foundational understanding that as someone's partner, you care about how they feel. I know, right? You would think that's a given, but there's many reasons why people get into relationships, and sometimes they're not for the right reasons. And sometimes it's not just because they really love and care about that person, unfortunately. Sometimes it could just be societal norms or something they want to gain from that relationship, something that they think they need to do to serve a purpose for themselves. And it's not truly much in the way of actually honoring that person as a human being, who they are, what they love. What do you love about them? What they can do for you? In a relationship, we have to base how you react to somebody else's emotions. You have to think about if that understanding is even there, because that needs to be there, or else this is going to go horribly wrong, and that's when you'd want to recognize this red flag. Some people might not want their partner to be upset for maybe for selfish reasons, like the fact that they would be annoying to them. They might bring down the mood and ruin their day because of their emotions, and they just want to have a good day.
Can you please stop being sad about all those things that I said to you that hurt your feelings and made you sad and were just way out of line? Because it's really bringing down the mood in the day.
Annoying, right? So people don't think emotions and feelings and expressing them is comfortable. So that might be why you don't want your partner to be sad. So that's called appeasing usually. That means you might try to appease it, fix it, whatever it is that you do, but you're doing it for purposes to help yourself because you don't want to deal with their emotions. So that's not a good practice, because that doesn't mean you're actually thinking and taking your partner fully into consideration by honoring their feelings and caring about them. You should just want them to not be sad for the sole purpose that you just want to see them happy. You truly care about their happiness. You actually feel for them the way you would feel about yourself. So, do you like being sad?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
No. It doesn't feel good. It feels sad. And so, since you don't like it, you would have that awareness of, I don't want that person who I love to feel that way either. So if I notice that, that's going to provoke me to do something about it and care and support and be there. And then all throughout, all the time, do the things that I know are probably going to make them happy and not the things that are going to make them sad on purpose. At least, you would think. So, therefore, it's concerning to a pretty high degree, enough to call it a red flag, for sure, hands down. If when you are hurt, especially to a level that it's so obviously visible that it's intense, where you are crying, maybe sobbing, maybe in just deep despair, maybe you're very sad, maybe you're shut down, maybe you're just all out of sorts. You're clearly very not happy. And in that moment, your partner shames you, blame shifts onto you, invalidates you, whatever your feelings are, whatever you're expressing, deflects away from what you're talking about to try to talk about something else so they don't have to focus on that, disregards you, tells you to get over it, or you're being sensitive, ignores you, just absolutely doesn't care and does not even have the time, cannot be bothered with it, becomes frustrated, annoyed, irritated, or angry about it, yells at you, raises their voice, or tells you, stop acting like that, or why do you always do this, gets mad at you in some way. This is not appropriate. I would say that no one deserves to be with a partner like that, and that you're not going to be having your needs met in that relationship. So that is a huge red flag that needs to be addressed immediately and cut out, because this is why emotional health is health. We separate it out as mental health, right? But it's just health. It's part of your body. I mean, your emotions come from your sensory thingies.
What is that?
It goes through your limbic system. It sends messages to your brain. Your brain is in your body. It's a physical part of your body. Your emotions are things that happen within you to alert you of what is going on inside of your body and inside of your brain and how you're receiving your world and how it's making you feel. There's a reason that humans feel. We are the only animal, the only species, the only one that cries. We're not the only one who, I guess, feels emotions. They say that there's some species that do, but they don't cry. So we are very special in having that. It's so special and unique. And why would we have that ability if it were something that we were supposed to suppress and not have?
I know.
No, there's people that could make an argument about many things that happen naturally that we gotta suppress, like things that are maybe against the law or whatever. Good point, but every single person has emotions. And it's a very natural urge, and it's the way your body works, and it's just something that every single human experiences. Don't you think that's probably supposed to be for a reason?
First of all, what you're not going to do is do.
And that it's supposed to be useful? I'd say so. Also, just centuries of studies. I don't know if it's centuries. It's a lot. It's a lot of years of studies in the medical world would lead us to believe, and is known as a fact, that emotions, when suppressed and held in and tried to stifle and not feel them and let them out, just causes stress, which is a silent killer. When you have stress constantly, chronic stress releases chemicals from your brain that are only meant to be released in certain high stress situations. That's what it's for. But when it's released constantly, chronically, because when you push your emotions back, that's what happens. It turns toxic to your body. Those chemicals are toxic to your body when they are there all the time. Therefore, yourself, you're literally damaging and restructuring your chemical balance. And you're just throwing off every system in your body that's supposed to operate correctly, naturally, when you could just feel them. You could just let them roll. And if talking about that hurts you so much that it makes you cry, that should not be shamed or be a problem. Of course, we have to curb them a little bit for certain situations. You can't just fly off the handle anytime. You're a teacher at an elementary school. You can't just burst into tears anytime you want. Probably not a good idea. But within reason. So in these types of relationships, often we know that avoidant attachment style, this is going to be a struggle for them sometimes, whereas maybe the anxious partner, the secure partner wouldn't have that as much. Even the fearful avoidant if they lean more anxious. So in this particular situation, the more avoidant partner or whoever is thinking that it's the other person who's being emotional needs to stop or get those emotions out of here. No, it's that person, the one that is telling them that their emotions are not okay. That's the person that needs to work on something. Now, there's also a self-reflective piece. Your emotions are your emotions. There are acceptable ways to express them within range of a spectrum, I guess, a little bit. And then there are not acceptable ways to express them, such as ways that are very demeaning or hurtful or uncomfortable for real, like infringing on other people's space and safety and their emotional health, that are not okay. So you throwing all the dishes out of your cabinet onto the hard floor and letting them bust into a million pieces while screaming is not your emotions, okay? No, that is a very unhealthy and abusive way of expressing your emotions. Your emotions are sadness, anger, fear, disgust. So if you're going off the deep end with that, then you also don't get to claim,
This is just how I express my emotions. I'm very emotional.
right? No. You can be as emotional as you want to be, but you cannot do that. So if that is the case, if you're having a lot of emotional volatility, you're often finding yourself getting out of control when you're very emotional, you want to get some help for that too. So make sure you're taking that accountability piece into consideration. So I'm going to assume that in this step, you understand how to self-reflect and you know that you are not exaggerating in that area. You're not going overboard in that area. But your partner is still shaming you or dismissing you or ignoring you about your emotions, okay? That's when this red flag absolutely applies. Let me give an example from my situation. I have so many. So many. So many. Let's just say we would be discussing the situation from the last red flag, the one about the imbalance of interests or whatever, expectations and interests, where he was just automatically dismissing anything I would try to show to him, but then he would take that very same thing, that very same clip, that very same video, and someone else would present it to him and he would watch it right away and then praise them for it right in front of me, but have dismissed it away as like my stupid interests. So in that situation, let's say we're talking about that. I'm not sure if that was the exact conversation on this night when this first happened that I'm referring to, but it was one of those same conversations that we had over and over and got nowhere with, where I was just getting no budge on anything. And at the time that I'm going to describe, at this time we were having arguments that weren't going anywhere. We were having the same one. I was seeing that. I was not liking the ways he was utilizing certain information that he knew about me against me. I wasn't liking the way he would deflect and just divert and just dodge every argument we would need to have, or he wasn't helping along the way with conflict resolution. He was not treating me well. He was stonewalling me a lot, silent treatment, lots of passive aggressiveness, and it was not going great. But still at this time, I still felt like we were going through a rough patch, and I knew he loved me. That's what I thought anyway. When you're really upset, really in your feelings, crying, something has obviously just really hurt your feelings. And regardless of whatever it's about, you don't want to ever think that your partner can just turn their back on you and know that you're upset and just get out of there and leave you there in that state. But mine could. And the very first time he did this, I was astonished. I know it's silly, like I probably should have realized far before this that he did not care about me, but I didn't, because he still was showing that he did, in my mind, I guess. So when he did this, I was crying. He was just saying such rude things. He was making the argument so frustrating. We were not getting anywhere. He was diverting all over the place and just hitting me where it hurts about things that we were not talking about, that did not need to be brought up. They were solely brought up to take a jab at me and deflect from what I was saying. I needed to stop. Like anytime I was bringing up behavior of his that I couldn't tolerate, no matter how I brought it to him, this is what he did. So it would get to me. He would say some really triggering things about me. On this night, I was in tears. I was so upset. He had said some particularly painful ones that night, and I was just in shambles. I wanted so bad for him to stop. Just stop being so mean to me. Just comfort me or something. I wanted to make it better so bad. I wasn't going to give in on what I was talking about. I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. Just basic human decency and respect. That's it. And he couldn't give it to me. I felt 20 times worse than I did at the beginning of it. And he says,
well, I gotta get to bed. I have work tomorrow.
And he's getting ready to leave me like that. Or, I guess, have me come upstairs with him and just go to bed. And I wasn't ready to go to bed because, no, you didn't need to say all of that. That wasn't even what we were talking about. Now you have me in tears. You can't just go to bed. You should finish what you started. You can't just leave me down here like this. And I told him,
Please don't go to bed. I'm really upset. You've hurt my feelings so bad right now. Like, what do you mean you're going to bed? You can't just go to bed.
I didn't think he was really going to do that. And then, he did. He said,
I gotta go to bed. I don't know what to tell you. I have work, so you can come up there with me if you want to. And if not, good night.
And he very nonchalantly exited the room and we went upstairs to go to bed. And I just remember sitting down there by myself, continuing to cry and feeling so worthless, just so unimportant. And just describing this story right now, it's like I wish I could have been outside of me without that bias lens in there to just be like, girl, get out of here. Tell him you are done and we're done. How dare you? I'm better than that. I deserve so much better than that. And I know that. But I was just, I don't know, I guess in disbelief. I didn't want to believe it. I have to take some accountability. I mean, I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to. I had to see that it wasn't true. He couldn't be this cruel to me and this dismissive of me and this treat me like I had this little value. I didn't want that to be who he was. And that's how I got myself stuck. I didn't want to address the red flag or leave if it wouldn't get resolved because I didn't want to accept that it couldn't be resolved. I wanted him to change it. That's what it is. And you're wasting your time. You are wasting your time. There is a tried and true method where you can vet these types of people out of your life that are not going to treat you how you deserve to be treated. Because when I would stay after those moments, that's not the last time he did that. He did that so many more times I can't even count. He didn't give a he just respected me less every time I just fell apart like that. And he showed his audacity by just waltzing up the stairs and going right to sleep, sleeping like a baby, mind you, because that night I was hurt. I followed up. I wanted to I wanted him to comfort me.
Girl, no.
It's so annoying, but I wanted him to. I wanted to make up. I didn't want to be doing that. And so I went upstairs and I got in bed with him and I cuddled up to him and I expected that maybe he would be laying there still awake and I could tell him I'm sorry that we fought and I could just make it right or something. If I just, maybe I could just get myself together and it would be fine. I can let it go. But to my surprise, he was knocked out asleep snoring already within minutes. He didn't have a single qualm about it. Just peaceful. That should have told me something. I just laid there in the bed and I remember I laid on my back, I stared up at the ceiling, and I had the thought enter my head of, I've never felt so alone next to another human being as I feel right now. I am so alone in this house, in this bed, in this relationship. I'm so alone. And it hurt so bad. I hated it. And he did that many more times. Many, many, many more times. And he was better at it every time. And this is the pain that sticks with me. It was when I did this. Okay, so I have to take some of the accountability when I continued to let this happen. Because every time he showed me,
I think you have this much value, which is none.
Every time he devalued me like that, just outwardly, just blatantly. And then I showed my face in that house again next to him, giving him love and my loyalty. And I stuck around. I said,
I agree. That's how much value I have. Yes, you're right.
that is what I said. It wasn't true. That is what I demonstrated to him, who was already convinced I had obviously not very much value. So why would he stop? Why would he stop? He did it already because that's what he wanted to do. I don't need to understand why. That's what he did. He wanted to do it. So why would he stop if I stay there and let him do it to me? So this is not okay. Do not let someone treat you like that because there is zero chance that by sticking around and letting them continue to do that to you, you cry and tell them how much that's hurting you. They know that. Zero chance that it's going to change in that situation.
And I know that's a place I have found myself stuck in often in my relationships is where I start to think if sticking around by that person's side who's treating me badly is going to earn some type of loyalty points or drum up some deep remorse in them later on for how they treated me. And they'll want to make it right and they'll see that I stuck by them. No, if you're in that position right now and you're wondering to yourself if it's worth it to stick by this person's side and if they're going to recognize that you did that when they were treating you like this, the answer is no, they are not going to. And that's a 0% chance that they are going to. It is not going to turn around if you do that. It is not going to turn around if you stay and endure it. I can tell you that hands down. You don't have to wonder. I'm telling you for sure, it will not change in that situation.
You must make it change. You must. And that's by setting a boundary and expecting that they follow it and they don't violate it. And when they do, honoring yourself and exiting that situation. Done. If you wait and wait and wait after they trample all over it first, they just take you for a fool, a valueless fool. They have no regard for you at the end. By the time you finally leave them, they're like,
Bye.
they've already depleted you of what they think of your value. They don't even see you as worth any respect anymore at that point. It did not improve. Even after I left, it did not improve, sadly. I had to leave. He was treating me worse and worse. And because I had to leave, even though I still loved him, I had to leave because I wasn't being treated right. I then went through the grief and the pain of everything that had happened in that relationship and just missing the relationship and the love that I had, that I worked for years to try to bring back. And I got breadcrumbed with it, and then I never got it back. And I was hurt over that. And I was hurt over the way I was treated in the end. And you know how much of that he made up for me? None of it. He made up for none of it. He actually treated me so much worse after I left. When I started to show my pain over the breakup and everything I had been through, yeah, no. You think he cared about my emotions then? When I don't even live in his house and I'm not even his girlfriend anymore? Hell no.
Oh no!
This man would have left me for dead. He did.
Wait, what?
He didn't give a crap what happened to me anymore. I truly believe this person. I believe that if I died tomorrow, this person would probably put on a show of his sadness, and he would move right the heck on with his life and feel nothing about it. I truly believe that. So, I mean, there was no reason for me to spend 3.5 years with this person, period. So recognize when someone dismisses your emotions or just doesn't treat them in the way that they're supposed to be treated. That is not the partner for you, and you need to make a strict boundary. Typically, I don't tend to struggle that much in my friendships and my relationships with being able to respond to other people's emotions, and not necessarily that difficult with near strangers either, except in one particular area of my life, which is very interesting, and that is in my family structure. I tend to be a bit more avoidant in that realm, and I always have been, even when I was my most anxious. So that's something that I still, even now in life, I haven't fully dove into to really figure out why. I have some ideas, but I guess that's the avoidance, is that I just haven't really explored it all the way. Interesting, because my whole life, I always had a really strong urge to want to be loved and seek affection and seek that from a partner. That's how I turned out to be anxious preoccupied. I wanted that. I wanted that closeness. I clung to it. I pursued it. I was a people pleaser. I just really always was just so desperate for love and affection. And I loved physical affection and being close with my partner. But interestingly enough, in my family dynamic, there used to be an ongoing joke about me that if my parents would try to hug me, I was like wrangling a cat. I would just be like trying to get out of it. I couldn't be hugged. I was flinchy. Didn't want to do it. Like I was just like, okay. And they would be like,
Oh, hug me.
you know. So I don't know. I'm going to probably look into that and figure out more. I mean, I have some ideas. So because I've now recognized that I am that way in my family structure, and actually even so since my last relationship, I transitioned to fearful avoidant, and I have noticed avoidant strategies and avoidant coping tendencies popping up throughout the past few years that I am leaning more towards rather than my previous anxious strategies. So I can attest to this fully. When you stifle your emotions, they're going to come out some way, somehow. I noticed that with certain triggers, I hate this, I can be brought to very high levels of emotionality that are unhealthy, very volatile, like that. And I absolutely hate it. I was never like that. It's out of line at times. Really? It's too much. And I used to have this in a way that I would go to tears in an unhealthy way, like an excessive level of emotion where I would just break down and beat myself up and talk negatively to myself and take it all out on myself. Well, in my more after this relationship I've just been through and the really difficult betrayal and breakup that I just went through in one of the darkest times that I've ever been through, I've noticed it's an increase more in anger. coming out than it ever used to be. I never used to be that go for the jugular, like very volatile, no shame in it in the moment, and just sometimes it's really just regretful. This hasn't been my tendency for most of my life. So most of my life, I have been very slow to anger. It wouldn't be my tendency to go to that type of volatility. I was never angry or vicious towards others or outwardly, except for in my relationships after many years had transpired of me feeling very beat down over a long period of time, and just brought to such levels of frustration due to my need to hang on when I saw that it was not what I needed to be holding on to. And eventually I would get to an angry level. And it is really, I'm just going to be transparent right now. And so that I can demonstrate this self-reflection piece, because I want to really show what that looks like. Right now, I feel a very strong temptation to justify how I behave because of what my ex treated me like. I want to say that it's his fault that I act this way. I want to say that he did this to me. It's really hard not to think that way, not to feel that way, and not to say that. What that's taught me, and what I kind of already, I already had some of this knowledge, what that's taught me is that people's behavior typically is not just because they're bad or that they just don't care about people. Some people it is, but like for the most part, we're going to just talk about like the most people, okay? What people are doing largely, almost always, is a reflection of how they've been treated, how they were affected by that, how much that harmed them, and not being able to process those emotions in a healthy way. So they haven't processed what happened to them yet in a healthy enough way for them to continue on being a emotionally mature and healthy person. And I am one of them. Right now, still even. I have a lot of work to do, and I'm working on it every day. So either way, however it comes out, in whatever emotionally unhealthy way you're expressing, it is because typically you have not processed emotions in the correct way, in a healthy way, to the point that you can find maybe acceptance, that you can function at a healthy level of emotion yet. And so the key is to figure out how to do that better. If you are someone who tends to have these side effect type of behaviors, where you are volatile with your emotions, or you are very quick to break into tears, you're very sensitive, right? That's what we call it sometimes. Or you are prone to anger, you have a short temper, or you don't like when people are emotional around you, you push emotions away, you act like you don't have them. All of those are all symptoms of the same issue. Emotions not being processed correctly. Right? So that's the answer. So if you find yourself doing any of those things, if you're largely told by a lot of people that that's your problem, or you're noticing that in yourself, that's the way you resolve it. You need to learn how to process through some emotions that are being carried in your body still. They're still in there. They're still affecting you. They're not getting processed through the way they're supposed to. Notice people that we think of throughout our lives and throughout history as great people that stood out to most people. Who are some people that we think are just great people that went down in history, and we always regard them as such grand people that were just transcended time. And I think of people such as Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, people like that. Many, many more. All right? Each of these people had a humanitarian aspect associated to the reason why they were admired as well. And if you can pick up on that, ask yourself, where does humanitarianism stem from? It stems from the emotions that we have. We have the capacity to feel and then feel empathy for others. So when you're constantly fighting away your own emotions, denying you have them, trying to push them down, not letting them process through, and doing all these other behaviors that are coming out, you're also not going to be very good at picking up on other people's emotions anymore. You're not going to be very good at relating to other people, being there for other people. You're going to see your relationships suffer, in all relationships around you, most likely, are going to suffer to some extent. If you're not processing your own emotions, you're not honoring your own emotions, you don't know how to have a healthy relationship with your own emotions, how can you have empathy and understand other people's emotions? And that is so spot on, because I have noticed ever since my relationship that I was in, my most recent one, my empathy piece that I've always had, I had it strong. So I still have a bit of it in there. but it has taken a massive hit. I feel less connected to others in the past year than I've ever felt in my whole life. This is to another level. I felt like I wasn't even a part of this world going on around me anymore, that I couldn't relate to anyone. I just lost all of that. And it's because I lost touch with my emotions and I didn't process them correctly. And I went through heartbreak and depression. And I went to an avoidant side rather than the anxious way of dealing with it that I used to be very familiar with. I went to a set of skills that I am not familiar with at all. I'm familiar with what they are, but I am not familiar with being pulled to use them. This was mind-blowing to me. I didn't recognize myself. I didn't know why I was doing the things that I was doing, but I felt so strongly pulled to do them, almost against my will. It was like protection at all costs. I was terrified to do anything other than that. So these things are strong. That's another way to gain compassion and empathy for others, is to recognize when you go through hard times like this, that you didn't want to be acting that way. It's almost like you were compelled against your will. And you had to really rise above to get out of it. And if you can just remember that, when you see someone else acting that way, not so kind, they might hurt you, they might hurt other people, you can have some grace for them a little bit more. And you can maybe not take it so personally, because you'll remember maybe when you weren't behaving so great as well with your emotions, and remember what had hurt you and where that was coming from, and realize that it's not always so pointed and sinister and personal. That's something that really helps with forgiveness as well.
One caveat I have to throw in here: make sure you use this information properly, okay? This is to be a healing tool once out of a toxic relationship. Use it to gain acceptance or forgiveness that helps you move forward. Don't mistake this for the empathy crutch that keeps you in the toxic relationship, giving chance after chance after chance. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, this is the grace that you can find in your heart towards other people, having compassion for them in the world, not for someone who is repeatedly treating you badly.
So people who have that humanitarianism, they're the greats that we remember. They're that way because they had emotion. So emotion is not something to be shamed. It's not something that's weak. These people were amazing. They were dynamic. They were strong. They changed the world in ways. And it is all because they had emotion. And they weren't afraid to speak out about it and to utilize it in their lives. And because they were in touch with their emotions, they were able to get to such a passionate level of caring about something, an issue, something plaguing other people, something going wrong in our world, that they were compelled into action. And if that care that they had for that topic was so deep and so passionate that it brought them to tears, then they cried openly about it. And because they were able to emote like that, just freely, and let those emotions out, they were able to make changes that impacted generations. And that's bravery, okay? That's bravery. That's why having emotions is not weak. It's actually the more brave thing to do. It's actually the more strong thing to do. So I'm not putting anybody down, because I had just submitted that I'm doing it too. But avoiding your emotions, it's the easier thing to do. It is. It's not the more brave thing to do. Neither are fun or easy completely. But it's not weak to show your emotions. That's a misconception. It's actually a lot harder to be vulnerable. It's a lot scarier to be vulnerable than it is to avoid and kind of clam up and protect. And that's always been regarded more as like the strong side. And I disagree. And I think that history has shown us that. Your fears only keep you stuck and hold you back if you refuse to face them. So the reason we get so hurt by others or devastated in relationships is because we're so afraid to feel those negative emotions. They terrify us because they hurt so bad, because we push them away our whole life. It's so natural and human to want to push those things away. They hurt. Pain. We avoid pain. We don't want to be in pain because it's painful. That's what it is. It's painful. And that's a fear. All of the attachment styles, when it really comes down to it, the root fear for all people, mostly across the board, is abandonment. Almost every human innately comes to a point where they have a fear deep down of abandonment. No one wants to be abandoned and alone. Nobody. So when we're in relationships, we can sabotage those relationships at times and really end up in relationships like what I'm talking about in this series, where you're in this toxic cycle for so long, when you saw the red flags for so long, but you held on. Why did you hold on? And then you feel so ashamed because you're like,
Why did I hold on for so long and just put myself through this? I did this to myself. Why? Why did I do that?
you can just go ahead and forgive yourself because you did that, because it's so painful. It's painful to go through a breakup, to let somebody go, to feel abandoned. It's painful. And when you avoid something your whole life, because it's one of your biggest fears, it's going to continue to be extremely painful when you go through it. It's going to continue to be this tumultuous, trauma-filled, long-lasting, epic volcano of pain to go through a breakup. But once you learn how to face it and not resist your emotions and be more in love with yourself and more sure of yourself, and always knowing that getting more familiar and letting yourself feel pain, the more you let that happen and you stop resisting it, you just let those emotions wash over you. You do the crying, you do the breathing, you do the things that I talk about in my betrayal videos, my betrayal podcast. You go through that process and you get it. You let it happen to you. You accept it. And then you get through that. And then you see that on the other side of that, there's another person that can love you again. There's so many people in this life that can love you. And if you've been through a breakup before and then you've met a new person and you've fallen in love again and you've seen, no matter how many times it's happened, if it's at least happened one time to you, you know that while you may not feel like you're going to recover from that, it feels like you're dying at that time, the first time. It feels horrible. Maybe even the second time or the third time. But after that first time, you at least know, after going through it, you know that that does go away, that you do recover from that. And the better you can get connected with feeling your emotions and knowing how to process them and realizing that you are all you need at the end of the day. Yes, we do need other people, but you need to love yourself. If you have faith in yourself that you are better than the treatment that you were receiving, and that is why you had to leave that relationship, or that they just weren't right for you, whatever the case may be, you're honoring yourself, you're loving yourself, you feel confident, and you know that you will find someone and you will gravitate towards people that will love you the way you need to be loved. When you have that assurance, that is when these painful breakups don't seem so scary anymore. And then they will stop happening that way. It'll still hurt when you have to leave somebody behind, obviously, but not like this. Not years of turmoil. Not these so traumatic, near-death experiences that you go through that just rob you of so many years of your life that you could have that turnaround so much faster. It's really just about feeling. So bringing it back around in relationships, if you come across a red flag of someone shaming you, judging you for releasing your emotions, or someone who is not validating your emotions, or telling you that your emotions aren't correct, or telling you that you're too sensitive and you shouldn't be feeling that way, and just largely doesn't seem to care that much about how you feel about things, puts you down about it, tells you not to cry, not to have those emotions, that's a red flag, because it is against everything that we are as humans and everything that we're supposed to learn to do on this planet. I believe there's tons of research that absolutely backs that up, but at the end of the day, many will say that may just be my opinion. But I would say it's a pretty educated opinion at this point. Well backed by research. Yes. Okay, so definitely a red flag if your partner shames you or judges you for your emotions and neglects to pay attention to working through those with you. There was an incident one time where I was preparing for a party at our house, and I had gotten very excited about putting this party on. It was something I loved to do every year. I had put a lot into it, and I was running behind on the day of, and I wasn't getting the help that I would have wanted to get it going on time. And people had started to show up, and I was not ready yet. And because of everything that was happening to me at the time, the way I was being treated, and then how I just didn't get any help any of the days leading up to it, although I expressed how much I wanted it to go well and how much I needed help. I wasn't getting any help up to then, and I wasn't really getting any help that day either. And I kind of had a bit of a moment where I needed to remove myself and go upstairs to my bedroom and cry it out for a minute, because I was going to start crying and people were arriving, and I was very disappointed. I did not have I was for a Halloween party. I did not have my Halloween costume on. My friends were coming with their children, and I had all these things planned. I had everything all good to go. But I felt like I had failed to get ready on time, and that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks at that moment when someone rang the doorbell, and I was like, I'm out of time, and I am not ready. So I needed to excuse myself for a minute and go upstairs and let those emotions out. So I went upstairs and I did that for a very, very short time. There was minutes had gone by. And suddenly there's a knock at my bedroom door, and it's my boyfriend and his friend's girlfriend, one of them that I was pretty familiar with and I got along well with. And she was there to say hello to me. And I don't think that my ex at the time knew that I had gone upstairs to cry. So when he came to the door with her, I was in there crying. And of course, like anybody's response would be, she wanted to ask me what was wrong and comfort me and be there for me, right? So he led her into our room, and she was greatly supportive for me and helped me get through that while my ex went back downstairs. Now, the party went great. And afterwards, after everything, I remember my boyfriend, rather than saying like,
Great party. You did great. You pulled it off. Awesome job. You're too hard on yourself. That was amazing. Everyone had fun.
you know, he had a great time. I watched him have a great time at the party. Instead of saying any of that, his comment to me was,
It's very embarrassing for me when you're crying and then people are coming up to me asking me, why are you crying?
so that was nice. So in that moment, I was pretty calm, and I luckily was in a good space at that moment to handle that. And my response was to ask a question in return. And it was,
Doesn't it make you wonder why others are so compelled to seek out and find out why I'm crying, but you are not?
as my boyfriend. And then he came back with a tried and true type answer of his, which was something to the effect of,
Well, most adults just do what they need to do, and they realize that you're not in elementary school and that being dramatic and crying isn't going to get them what they want or help the situation. So that's typically not a response of an adult.
something like that. It was just, okay, record on repeat, whatever. Something like,
Crying doesn't solve anything except for gaining you sympathy, if that's what you're trying to get.
you always think of how to perfectly respond when you look back. Hindsight's 20/20, right? When you're looking back on things like that and you're just like,
Why didn't I say this? Why didn't I tell them this?
I'm not really sure what I said in the moment after that, but if I had a chance to respond now, I would tell him that.
That is actually precisely what crying solves, based on research.
And I understand that he was being, a little bit rude, trying to imply that I cry for attention. And I cry because I want sympathy, and I'm doing it on purpose, and I'm somehow manipulating or faking something, right? Firstly, just want to put it out there. Always, I try to be really accurate with my information, and what I'm communicating is that there is no study that has determined for sure what actually causes crying. We understand the common circumstances that surround crying, what pushes us to cry. We know a lot of information about it that's pretty solid. We understand the biological process of how it happens in our body. We just don't for certain know the purpose it serves for us and why it happens to us. We have some theories that are very strong, okay? So I'm going to go over some of those. This is very interesting, actually. I had never knew any of this information. So I only studied it when I was going to make this video. So I'm going to share it with you. There are 3 types of tears. I don't know if you knew this. I didn't know this. There's basal tears. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Basal. There's reflexive tears, and then there are emotional tears, okay? So basal tears are the tears that are just constantly in our eyes. It's the constant lubrication of our eye. If you touch your eyeball, you'll notice it's a bit squishy and wet. It's because there's basal tears in there. They're always in there. They're constantly produced by our body automatically, all the time. They are replenished for us every time we blink. So that's why we blink. Is because we need to replenish the basal tears in our eyes so that they can stay lubricated and protect our eyeball. It's a very sensitive piece of our body. Reflex tears are the tears you sometimes get if maybe when you're peeling an onion and that gets into your eye, or like wind or smoke or something comes into your eye and then your eyes water. Those are reflex tears. Also, I know that when I got my nose pierced, it looked like I was crying, but I actually wasn't feeling emotional or any pain like that. It was painful, but that wasn't why there were tears coming out of my eyes. The tears that were coming out of my eyes were because this is a sensitive area that causes your eyes to water. And those were my reflex tears. And then the emotional tears, I'm sure you can imagine and or determine, are the tears that we cry when we are upset, when we're feeling an emotion. And actually, I misspoke. They're not always just when you're upset. They can be other emotions too, like when you feel an intense amount of joy. You're overwhelmed with joy, you might cry. And those are happy tears, but they're still emotional tears. So anyone that's tied to our emotions, those are going to be our emotional tears. Now here's the really cool part about this, okay? This is so fascinating. I'm just going to kind of read through this for you because I'm still understanding it myself. There are many benefits attributed to crying, such as to self-soothe by activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So crying activates that. I didn't know that. Releasing oxytocin, which relieves pain. Wow. That's so useful. That makes so much sense because if you're crying, you're probably in pain, and oxytocin is the chemical in your body that takes away pain. Beautiful. And so crying releases that. That's like, oh, it's like magic. I love it. Wow. I'm so excited when that happens. Our bodies just are, this is the kicker, okay? It serves as a universal signal to help you get support in times of distress. So, it is largely understood by researchers that crying happens because it is a way for us to signal other people that we need support.
Surprise, motherfucker. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
And there's nothing wrong about that. That is what it is intended for. That doesn't mean that people are crying on purpose to manipulate others into being sad for them. Some people might be doing that, but not everyone is doing that. But they are hoping for support when they cry. I mean, that's what you need. That's what you're seeking at times. It's not always what you're seeking, but if you're crying in front of another person, I mean, it's pretty understood that they're probably going to be supportive of you, hopefully. Not always, but that's typically what you would like. And there's nothing wrong with that. All right, so stay with me because it gets even better, okay? Right, well, listen to this. So one theory is that as a baby, you have an automatic instinct to cry when you need something. So babies aren't thinking through the process like, I'm going to cry because I want my mom. Infants cry when they come out of the womb. Okay, so it is an automatic instinct. They are not cognizant of it. They aren't planning their manipulation on you when they're crying, okay? So we're born this way. As this instinct fades, which studies show that that instinct does fade over time, you're not automatically brought to tears. So similarly, as when you're an infant. But as this instinct fades, the response to your crying transforms it to a learned behavior that is conditioned within our subconscious to signal others that we are in need of comfort and support. So, what do we know about what happens in our subconscious mind? It's automatic. So as a baby, when we cried, automatically, and that brought our caregiver in to support and comfort us, as that instinct faded away, it instead turned into a learned response, deeply embedded in our subconscious. So we are now like Pavloved, basically. You know what that is? The bell, the dog, and the saliva. Look it up. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you do. But we're basically Pavloved into crying when we need emotional support and comfort. And it's not, you don't have to try to do it. It's literally programmed into your subconscious mind. Unless you have run into situations where you have pushed out that programming and resisted it and transformed it into a different coping mechanism of forcing yourself not to do that very natural process. It still gets better. I love it. Also, I love this part. Emotional tears have components that are not found in basal tears or reflex tears, such as prolactin, potassium, manganese, and stress hormones. This would suggest that the purpose of crying could be to release pain and stress, because that's what those regulate, those chemicals that are inside of us. Literally, when our tears come out, only emotional ones though, because the other tears that our body produces does not have this in it. So these are specific types of tears that come from somewhere else that are coming directly to relieve us of pain and stress. So it's literally purging your body of pain and stress right out your eyeballs, okay? They've tested tears, and these things are in emotional tears only. So I love that. That's so fascinating. I had no idea. That's amazing. So our body knows when we're crying from emotional pain and stress rather than just getting affected by an onion. It knows. And those tears are biologically made of something different. That's fascinating. That's amazing. I'm such a nerd. Sorry. Additionally, emotional tears are not automatically produced by the body in the same way that basal and reflex tears are. So basal and reflex tears are not automatically produced because of your subconscious belief. They are automatically produced because they are a process of your body. But no, much differently. For emotional tears to occur, your limbic system, which is the system that regulates your emotions, has to send signals to your brain to tell it to activate the gland that produces these tears. Wow. This information would suggest that to cry emotional tears, your limbic system must be detecting an emotion, like sadness, joy, anxiety, etc., on a scale large enough to warrant the necessity for the relief process to begin in your body. Man, that's just, I don't even have words. I just love it. Women tend to cry on average more than men. I think we could probably have guessed that. And for women, it's, when they did these wide studies, women's 3.5 times per month, in comparison to men, which were at 1.9 times per month that they report crying. And this is widely attributed to, many believe, societal pressures, expectations, and stigmas that differ between men and women surrounding crying. Scientists and medical professionals mostly agree across the board that crying is beneficial to your health. And to attempt to stop yourself from crying can have negative effects to your health and overall well-being. There it is. All right. While it is possible, here, this is the part I would tell my ex. While it is possible to make yourself appear to be crying by forcing your eyes to produce reflex tears, you fake cry, it's been seen that the average person would not possess the ability to make this process look believable. Actors and actresses who learn this process because they have to act, and also those who do manipulate with their emotions. They may try to actually cry to make people feel guilty or get sympathy or, avoid their accountability. We know there's people that do this. We do know that it's actually more uncommon, but made to seem very common in movies and TV. But these people that work as actors and actresses, they have worked at the skill of tricking the limbic system into detecting the emotion necessary to produce emotional tears. Sometimes thinking of something very sad or traveling back to a traumatic event in their mind as though they are experiencing it in that moment, and they're able to pull into that system and pull that forth and make that look believable in a professional way. These people practice this for years. They get into really intense practicing of this, and that's why they get paid the big bucks to fool us on screen into thinking that this is the life they're living. They're playing that role. The average person around is not going to be very skilled at this. They may try it, but you can usually pick up on it. If you've ever seen somebody fake crying, I would say most of the times when I've seen somebody fake crying, I can pretty well tell that. And it's not that often that I tend to see that happen. Maybe more so with children, once they're transitioning out of that stage of it being instinct and they learn that if they cry, they can get their way maybe. If your partner is constantly acting like you're crying for attention, or somebody accuses you of that when you're authentically crying about your emotions, which is something that happened to me in my last relationship a lot. And it's just not rational. It was very obvious. I would express why I was crying. They were very good reasons to be upset. And they were things that were actually happening. So, you can probably put all that together and pretty much, unless you are having a different reason for wanting somebody to believe and be gaslit into thinking that they're just being manipulative when they cry, which is what was happening, you're going to put two and two together and realize, like, no, this person's just upset. They're very upset. This is authentic, and they're crying because they're upset because something's wrong.
To react to someone you supposedly care about and love when they're visibly upset and crying in front of you with a complete absence of compassion. And instead of showing them any kind of empathy, you just accuse them of playing the victim. That's a demonstration of being completely emotionally tone deaf. But that would be the best case scenario in this situation. Because sadly, it could be a lot worse than that. And it might likely be. Because if they're not emotionally tone deaf, then that means that they know exactly what you're going through. They actually witness that you're in as much pain as you're showing to them, and they don't care. And the reason that they're telling you that you're playing the victim is so that they can avoid having to deal with your emotions, and so that they can make you feel like you're wrong for having them, so that they can avoid the situation for whatever reason. Either they don't believe you, which is bad. 2, they don't care how you feel. It doesn't matter to them, and they just would rather get out of it and not have to take any accountability or deal with any of it, which is terrible. Or 3, they're not even listening to you. they've just already formed their own opinion and they're not even listening. They don't even know what you're telling them because they don't even value the words that come out of your mouth. Any of these things are terrible situations, and you definitely want to set a boundary and never put up with behavior like this. This is so insulting. It's so uncaring, and it's just such a lack of empathy. These are things that when you see them, you want to run. Don't walk away. Run away.
The reason my ex could not ever arrive at that is because he was doing what I was saying. He was gaslighting me. He didn't want to deal with my emotions. He didn't care to figure out how he was having an influence on my emotions and how he needed to be accountable for the things he was doing that was participating in that. He had no intention of doing that and no motivation to do that. So that should have been a red flag to me. And I should have been able to, I wish I would have, and I will now be better at recognizing that early on, because that is not something that is likely to turn around if someone behaves like that, because it's just a good indication that either they are trying to control you, they're trying to punish you for something, or they just don't value you being happy. They don't feel connected to your emotions. They don't think they're their problem. They don't want to deal with it. They want you to take that elsewhere. So that's not likely to turn around unless someday they see a need for that to turn around. So don't bother. An important fact I did come across while I was doing this research was that people that tend to accuse others of crying to be manipulative at times when someone is authentically crying. If you notice someone's doing that to you a lot and you're like, inside you're like, I know, I'm crying because you're hurting me and this is sad. And they're constantly accusing you of trying to get attention or something, some ulterior motive when you cry. It's usually because that's what that person does. What? That's why they're thinking of that. That's why they have a tendency to suggest that, is because they do that. And we know that people with character disturbances, and especially narcissism, are prone to this. When they don't want to take accountability for something and they don't want to be brought to have to be supportive and have to take accountability for something that they did, and they see you crying because you're actually hurt over how they treated you, they're going to be quick to accuse you of the same thing because they do that. That's why they're familiar with that tactic. So familiar. That's why they think you're always reaching for that, because they do that. So watch out for that. Just so you know, a healthy partner would most likely see you crying as a sign of you being in a lot of distress and that you're in a lot of pain. They would immediately want to comfort and support you and understand why you are feeling that way. So that's how you know that you're not experiencing this red flag, is that your partner cares when you're upset. Period. That brings us to the end of red flag number 5, which is if they're judging you or shaming or neglecting you for having a healthy level of emotions. As we know, humans need to feel their emotions because it's born into us. It's a part of our body. It's a part of our systems. It's something that's happening physically inside of us, and it's not recommended by any medical professional that you should ever suppress your emotions. So learn to be proud of those, learn to express them in a healthy way, process them, work through it. Don't hold on to it. Don't let anybody shame you out of it. Make sure you have a partner, and make sure you're being a partner that is very emotionally validating, and you guys are there for each other. And if you see this red flag, guess what? The very next episode, we're finally to the one where I'm going to tell you how you can avoid the biggest mistake that I think I was making in relationships that led me to these terrible, tumultuous, drawn out relationships that in the end felt like a train wreck and damaged me for a very long term amount of time. And I'm going to tell you how to make sure that doesn't happen. So make sure that if you're not subscribed, you hit that subscribe button. You also hit that bell, because you're going to want to get notified for this one, because this is going to be the essential episode. Remember, I told you, you don't want to miss this one. And I mean it. You do not want to. Do not miss it, okay? You must be here. You must see this part. It's all this information is for naught if you don't know how to make sure to not let it happen to you. So I'm going to give you a very step-by-step method of helping you to not fall into this trap, okay? That's going to be the very next episode. So I will catch you in the next couple of days when that comes out. Please be here. I love when you're here. Thank you so much. You're the greatest. I love you so much. Bye.